Hey, welcome, Kim. It's so nice to talk to you by the fireside of the Upper House. But tell us how you got to Asia in the first place, because you were born and bred in Australia. And how did you get here?
I was 17 years old and wanted to run away from my mother. I was a colorist in my early years, and I was given an opportunity to work for the salon chain called Rivière, Les Fa in Chinese. It was the first European salon chain here in Asia, in Hong Kong especially, that opened in the 70s. So as I face my 40th year this year, in 1976, I first stepped foot on Asian soil. So it's been a most amazing adventure.
So what got you into styling and hair in the first place? I mean, was it something that you knew you wanted to do, or did you fall into it by accident?
Well, actually, no. My father come from a farmer background. I was born in the Margaret River region of Western Australia. For some of you who don't know, that's the winery region. My father was a farmer, and we come from very simple background. I don't come from the high society of Paris. I come from a really simple, we didn't even have magazines, we didn't even have TV. And I was working as a part-time job on Saturday, and I got into hairdressing when I was 14 years old. And as going fast track, I got given an opportunity to come to Asia when I was 17.
But your mom was an actress, right?
Mom was an actress, yes. She was in repertory, in the theater. But when she got married, it wasn't the done thing, and she was the farmer's wife. But my father...
Was she fashionable?
My mother was very fashionable. She would put lipstick on and scarves and go up to the shop, and all the gossiping women in town would spread rumors that she obviously was having an affair because she was wearing lipstick. So, going back in the farmlands of Western Australia, it's very different from Hong Kong. But in answering your question, I was given the chance to go into the hairdressing business against my father's wishes. He wanted me to take the road well-traveled and get a university degree and get a doctorate or become a professor in something, or a doctor or a lawyer, as most fathers want their sons to do. But luckily, because of my mother, she let me go into hairdressing.
So wait, so when you said to your father, I think I want to be a hairdresser, what did he say?
He didn't say anything. He actually spat blood. He said, you might as well be a bloody ballet dancer. And because I didn't know what that was. And he says to me that, that there's no way you can finish university, then you can do hairdressing. And luckily for me, my mother supported me through it, and my father, in the end, gave in, because fortunately for me, I won an award in the first year of my apprenticeship.
In Australia?
In Australia. And my boss at the time spoke with my father and said, well, the kid's got some talent, why don't you let him do it? And my father gave in. But I can remember, if you go back into the 70s, Midwest, anywhere, whether it's America or Australia, and my father was being consoled by his mates. And my father, was like, I better sit down and have a beer. My son's going to be a hairdresser, and worst of all, it's a ladies' hairdresser. It was the worst thing. It was an interesting time, and I was lucky that I had a mother, and eventually my father supported me through it. So.
Okay, so when you were an apprentice in that day, what was it about the profession that made you think, okay, I found it, this is what I wanted to do?
It wasn't in Australia. I finished my apprenticeship and then went off to Hong Kong. At 17, Anthony Walker, who was the chairman of Rivière at the time, came to Australia looking for young talent, and I was on the next ship out of there. My mother said I could go away for a year, had to come back, and she's still complaining 40 years later that I haven't returned. And anyway, he brought me to Hong Kong to do coloring, and at that time, if you colored your hair, you either were a lady of the night, or it just wasn't kosher to color your hair if you were Asian, especially,
right?
absolutely. Yeah. And Hong Kong at that time was obviously British, and it was the British set, the Americans, and of course it was the Chinese. And being 17 years old and from Australia, I didn't know anything about culture or class or anything. I knew nothing. I had my basic skills, but I didn't really know about how to even assimilate to a new culture. After a year, I had an opportunity to leave, and I wanted to go and work for the great Vidal Sassoon in London in the 70s. And it was like, he'd already started from the 50s, but by the 70s, he was up there and happening. And he was the man to work for.
So before because I want to talk to you about Vidal Sassoon, but I'm curious, when you first arrived here, were you a stylist for the expatriates, or were you?
I was a colorist at the time. I wasn't a stylist at all. I was 17 years old, and I knew how to do, at the time they called it tips and streaks. It was the hot new thing in the 70s.
Asians.
Some of you are too young, you don't know, but going back in those era, it was like, we did this multi-shading colors through their hair.
Like frosting?
Frosting, yeah. There you go. You're telling your age, Deborah.
Sorry. And that was for mainly the expatriates?
Expatriates, well, I was here to color Asian hair, but Asian women didn't color their hair, only the club girls colored their hair. And there was the clientele for that, trust me. We opened in Lock Road in Kowloon. I used to get the Walla Walla. There was no tunnel, it hadn't been finished. I worked in Lock Road and we moved to the Holiday Inn. It was very new. Hong Kong had not yet embarked on Western culture. The Cheongsam was still in vogue. Blue jeans at Bang Bang was called, Faded Glory jeans. I think Jim and Yip, if anyone remembers, and they're all too young so they won't know. But in those days, it was very early days and I was brand new here. In those days, it was the Hong Kong Club, which I couldn't afford, and I wasn't shishy enough. There was Repulse Bay Hotel. There was the Farama Hotel where they had a salon, and one in the Holiday Inn. It was very interesting times. When we first moved here, it was so glamorous and so shishy.